Welcome back. I don't know if we have to wait for Daryl or if anybody can hear my voice out in the hallway and join us. It seems that networking opportunities are never quite long enough. You're just getting into the heart of the conversation, and we draw you back into this room. We're going to go ahead and get started with the video. If you will go ahead.
Marine autonomy is a hard problem, and in many ways, the open ocean environment is the most difficult domain for any watercraft to operate in.
Even given a stable physical platform, the disturbances associated with the ocean surface make mastering essential dynamics and control a significant challenge.
Autonomy in general is extremely difficult because you are trying to make a system that handles things that by nature we can't predict.
The disturbances of the ocean do affect the dynamics of our controls, and one of the ways we compensate for that is we have an anemometer, and we utilize that to measure the currents, and from there we compensate with our motor controller.
The Maritime RobotX challenge tasks have been designed to represent individual real-world missions, but also to encompass the diversity of activities that we expect autonomous boats to perform out in the open ocean. Activities like transportation, oceanography, and environmental surveying.
Putting to sea over large distances takes time, so while accurate perception is important, an autonomous mariner must also be able to prioritize tasks effectively and adapt to changing requirements.
Rather than focusing on perception, we're looking at the autonomy and how you bring those different levels of perception together. Kind of like with a self-driving car, you can see the things out there, what do you do with it? And so we're starting to pull those together with this competition.
We know that this course can change any given time, so we're able to switch and move what mission we're running and key details about that mission rapidly and without recompiling.
In such a variable environment, flexibility and robustness are crucial. No matter how well teams prepare, their test conditions at home may not match those of the competition.
Boats will encounter unpredictable conditions both above and below the water and need to combine sensor data under high levels of uncertainty.
Combining sensor data ends up being useful because it provides you with more information than individual sensors alone could provide you. For example, on the boat we have a LiDAR and then we also have camera data. The LiDAR gives us these 3D points. When we're getting those points relative to the camera, things can get a little bit iffy about where they are relative to each other because you have to get the measurements exactly perfect.
In the future, we are trying to install some underwater sensors to make sure that we can actually see the terrain underneath and make sure that we don't hit them.
Being lost at sea is not just a figure of speech. One of the biggest challenges is making sure an autonomous boat can make it back to port.
So we're actually funded on a research project to do communications constrained path planning on the ocean. We're going to have these boats out miles into the ocean, and that is terrifying. If it doesn't come home, that's it. Like, there's nothing else you can do. So these competitions are really great because we're getting rid of all the bugs in the software, all the bugs in the hardware that can go wrong, and we're just vetting every single system.
The progress being made here at Maritime RobotX is helping to give us confidence that we can send unmanned boats out to perform a mission and they'll return safely.
Keep up to date with the challenges involved in advancing ocean autonomy at robotx.org.
Well done. Welcome back. We're going to have a session this morning on, and I hope I get this right, Bill. It's the IEEE OES Autonomous Maritime Vehicle Student Competition International Coordination Committee. We all know about many competitions happening throughout the world, and last year Bill Kirkwood and Tom Curtin and a few others put together a group. We had our first meeting in Porto, Portugal, and Bill is going to describe to you their objectives and how they've established themselves and invite your participation in the future. And I will let Bill do his own introduction since I have failed and don't have it. Thank you, Bill. Then I'm going to come back up and talk to you a little bit while we're waiting for Bill to get up there. I know Daryl has slipped and used the word conference a couple of times. This is not a conference. This is a forum. This is a working meeting the entire way. Yes, okay. And we're going to work on Bill. Okay.
Thank you. Okay, I don't know how many of you know me. For the last 26 years or so, I've been working for the Monterey Bay Aquarium Research Institute, and the first job I was hired to do there was build ROVs, and then I moved into the autonomous world in the late 90s. So my interest in this started actually as I'm an adjunct at Santa Clara University also, and started doing vehicles with students there. But we never thought about competitions. So just give you a little background here. This is one of the vehicles. We built a number of ROVs first, some aerial platforms and whatnot. This is a swath boat, small waterplane area twin hull. So something like your boat, but we solved the problem of disruption by going with thin legs through the water and having the buoyancy below the surface. It was built out of PVC tubes. It's quite cheap. Used leftover instruments from Mbari and anywhere else I could steal them. Some trolling motors that we bought at Kmart. So, but what's really funny is the boat was done all by undergrads. So we don't have any kind of massive sensors. We have a GPS, and we have an AHARS, and that's it. We started doing very simple multi-beam mapping, as you can see here. Started getting into more sophisticated multi-beam mapping, and in that top picture is actually a paid job. So the USGS, the United States Geological Survey, hired us for many years to go to Lake Tahoe and 3D map a debris field from a tsunami that occurred in the lake. So what I'm pointing out here is that undergrad students with a little bit of mentorship can go a long way. So in the meantime, I'm also working in OES, and I realized more about the AUV world. And ended up getting involved with Hanu Singh in re-establishing the AUV workshops. And there'll be a slide at the end on that. From that, we started looking at what we should be doing as a society, as OES, and how we should help out and get more involved with the community in a way that's meaningful. So this is, you can call any one of us. So Hayato, who you heard earlier, is also one of the chairs. Hanu, I think, who's anybody who's in the AUV business underwater probably knows Hanu, and he'll be coming back to join us now. He's doing pretty well. So this is a little bit of what we're talking about and what we wanted to do and get involved in the education and technical scope and help careers. That's what we're there for. So the question was, how do you do that? Talked with management of the society, and we decided to redirect our money and efforts towards a lot towards competitions, looking to increase the publications for the community, give you another outlet so you can get peer-reviewed publications, access to some resources. So we support several of the competitions now. We'll probably try and expand that if we can. But it's more about that connection, things like this that you're doing here that we're trying to do. So Tom and I met in Shanghai and started talking about what's wrong with where we're at right now. What can we do to improve it? And so the concept came up that I would put in for money from IEEE and hold a meeting to bring everybody together. We wanted to see an increase in innovation, and we wanted to see the students moving forward as opposed to going backward every time somebody changes on the team or having more struggles. So really want to try and create a place with resources, not to run competitions, but to support them. And that's really our goal. So you'll never see me in Daryl's spot. Although I got attacked on the street as you the other day. I don't know where she is. She's not here. So we did call this meeting in Portugal. These are some pictures from the actual conversations going on and so forth. And, oops, why is it turned off on me? Oh well. So these were the things that the committee came up with. This wasn't what I came up with. This is what a lot of the people in this room came up with, and a lot of others who aren't here. So in these slides, I'm going to give them to Kelly. So there's a couple of them here that have names and stuff that if you want to look through it, I'm not going to read them here, but you can have the slides. So they came up with these different aspects. So what's the organizer faces problems? What are the competitors faces problems? What does industry want out of this? Because that's ultimately where we want to go, our customer base. And then what future things do we need to think about? And so this is what the AMV, with all the other letters, dropped now because it's just too crazy. So we call it the Autonomous Marine Vehicles Committee. With respect to the competitions, this is what we want to do. Right? This is the concept, is to come out and help you. And we want to create these additional opportunities for cross-pollination. So the intent of all this is to start to support things like this meeting and at the competition. So I now go to many of the competitions. Singapore, I'll be in Kobe next spring. Italy, are you guys holding it in Italy again next year? Do you know, Gabriel? You are? Okay. Piombino again? Oh, La Spezia. Oh, a new part of Italy, okay. And then in San Diego also. So hopefully I'll see a lot of you guys at those various places. So this is the list of participants that we invited and who contributed things. Many of them are in the room here. So Zaz, Amir, Esteban, of course Tom, Kelly. So we're going to hold a little meeting on Friday after everything's closed down here and just touch base again and see what the next step is. These are the competitions that were represented at the meeting. So we realize that's not everybody, but that's the ones who accepted my invitation and could make it. So over the 2 days, a lot of these people gave their input about what they want to see out of this kind of a coordinated committee. And I won't go into a lot of the details about certain parts of it because tomorrow Tom will talk about the tasks and so forth. So I'm going to leave that so you'll be all eager to be here tomorrow. But this is what we've accomplished so far. So at the moment, we've got a charter. We created a common language. So we now have a list of words because one of the things we found was that, for example, I call something an AUV and other people call it an unmanned underwater vehicle, a UUV, and so forth. So what we want to do is have some commonality in terms of particularly acronyms so that people would know what you're talking about when you're in Singapore versus Italy versus France. So there's a fundamental ranking and tasks matrices that Tom is working on, and he's been working with Yvonne Pedlow out of Harriet Watt to develop. We've also got a system for consistent judging that we're working on that came also out of Yvonne and Piombino. The one that's I'm really think is the one I think you want to take advantage of is we've started a way for journal publications and other ways to get your information out. So OES has an e-magazine called Earthscene. It's got, I don't remember how many hits a month, but it's hundreds of thousands per month. And they're always looking for articles. So when you guys do something, you can write a very short 800 word article or so with some pictures and whatnot, and they'll get that published for you and get it out into the community. It's sort of a generalist kind of a thing to just educate the populace. So it's a great thing to do. And then the other thing is we're going into a lot of special editions. So for example, this meeting here will have a special edition coming out of it for those who get selected, which Lottie is leading up for those who know about it. So 8, maybe 10 of the papers here will go into a special edition. And that's a fully peer-reviewed, citable type condition. While I'm here, I'll take a moment. One of the other things that we do at OES that's slightly different than other societies is our oceans conferences. You can get into those with a publication that is reviewed, but it's not peer-reviewed at the highest level. And the reason we do that is particularly to train younger people to get exposure to how to get into publications. So you can get in with what we call an extended abstract, 1 to 2 pages, and if that gets reviewed and you're accepted and you present, an invitation can be sent to you because your paper looked pretty good to publish in the journal. And so it's opposed to something like IROS where you have to be peer-reviewed to publish to get invited to present. We do it a little bit differently to give you more opportunities. Think about that as a pathway also. That's the Earthscene logo when you open up the web page. And then, okay, I've got it here at the bottom here. Okay. Oh, the Earthscene, we have actually have an article we published also that Tom and I just did, and Esteban and Zaz, that's going into Earthscene in the next issue. So it'll talk about the AMV being created, and I've given your contact information and a couple others here to be contacted by them to write up this particular event. So we're trying to help get what you do out into the community. It's bigger than just our own little group, so that other people know about it, and hopefully that'll get you some more industry support, and if nothing else, some interest in people coming to the competitions to see. So the future, we still have a lot to do. One of the things that we did for OES is we now include a vertical kind of structure. So we include the aerial vehicles with the surface and subsurface as a system. Previously, we were sort of looking at it just as subsea or surface. So we've added in that aerial component. So we're putting in, OES is putting in more resources to support the competitions. We don't have a ton of money, but we're spreading it around the world sort of evenly. So we support Singapore, China, Japan, the ERL group, and then I'm going to try and get some more additional money for the RoboSub. See what I can do there. We are doing a lot more student poster competitions. So for the guys that are, most of your students, like a poster competition will be out here, we actually have awards to get some of your travel funded, and you can win money and so forth to support you in your work. The other thing I've done is I started giving out awards at the competitions for performance. So in Singapore, we've been doing that for a number of years. And sometimes most of them are cash awards, some I think, but I started giving out plaques and so forth that you can take back and put in your lab, because what we found is that people like winning. So we want to have continued meetings to update and have relevance to the community as the community changes. So we have not set up a way to do that yet in AMV. We just use these kinds of meetings where we do it sort of ad hoc. It works okay. Maybe that's the way to do it even. I'd like to get some students involved in it at some point too, so they could give their feedback about how useful it is or not, and we can change things. We still are working on ways to support the mentors and students. So Vladi, now that you've moved on to the car world, I'm not sure what we'll do for the mentor side. We'll find somebody. Maybe you handpick somebody in the room, would you? So the idea there is that when teams have changes, the mentors have not always been good about passing down the information to the next set of students. They don't have a structure for it. And so, but they're busy people. And so sometimes they're just doing the job so as the students who are motivated can compete, and they're not really involved. So we want to help that problem. And then the other problem is when new students come along, we've seen teams where they were very dominant at one point, and then the new students come in and they didn't get all the documentation and knowledge handed down. And so they start back over from scratch, and that's not what we want to see. I want to see things move forward. So that's the student committee. I've got to get some stuff up on the website. We have a working website with all of our documentation. I think you're more than welcome to look at anything. There's nothing secret. But we want to structure it up with more of a website where you can actually just go and download what you need, pull it off and read it and that kind of thing. That's not the working kind of thing. But then I just want to be clear that as OES, we just are never going to run a competition. You'll see our logos on there. We'll support them. We'll help you get published and help your careers and connect and that. But we're not here to interfere with any one of those competitions. We don't want to run them. So it's the guys that run your competitions right now will be the ones, not somebody else. So that's really it in a nutshell about where we're at. It's only a very, very young group. I think we sort of formed most of this in 2 days, and then we've been working on it for a few months part-time, as everybody has to. And so we have a way to go, but we'll get there. And then I just want to mention that there's another opportunity coming up for you. We have the student poster competition again. There'll be a special issue assigned with this, so the ones that are selected out of there, out of the proceedings, will get to be published in the journal with an expanded paper. But this is going to be held in Portugal, and if you've never been, it's really worth going. So I just mentioned that because it's a really good, focused opportunity. And we're going to start, and the fellow who's putting this on is João Souza, and he's much like Stephen Williams here in Sydney, focused on the multi-platform type integration. So it's a demonstration of us getting into that, where the aerial surface vehicles and so forth are more represented. And I think that's my last slide. So I was told it's supposed to be 10 minutes, right?
Well, I think you've got a timer there. How much time do you have left?
Yeah, but there's time for questions and stuff, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So there's about 10 minutes left. So anyway. any questions or comments? None, huh? Yeah.
You mentioned about trying to have a uniform name like UUV versus AUV and that aspect. And I guess the same applies to USV and ASV for the surface vehicles. But I sometimes think that it's a community that you're dealing with. So if you want to say you're dealing with a heterogeneous platform, so you say UAV, USV, UUV, in that context, kind of.
Yeah, and again, this is where we want the community feedback and whatnot. These are, but by the way, the things that we're talking about are only relate really to the competitions. Oh. So this group is about helping the competitions be more uniform. The basic underlying concept is what we've seen is people will do several things. They come to a competition very unprepared. So we want to have some kind of mechanism to help them be prepared. Then what we want to also do is if somebody's competing in let's say China, right, where they've got a different language structure entirely from, you know, America, we want to give them a way to communicate commonly. And then the same with the structure that Tom is putting together. So if I can do a task at this level, it's well defined, and then I accomplish that task, then I know I'm working at level 1 or level 2 or whatever, and I can go and be competitive against other teams based on this knowledge because I've accomplished that where I'm at in my own place. So if I go all the way to America from China, right, I don't go there and find out, man, everybody's 20 steps ahead of me, right? I can go there with my head held high and know I can compete on an even keel. So the tasks are not going to be laid out in such a way that every competition will be the same. So there's these common attributes to tasks. So Singapore will have their track look differently than RoboSub or whoever, but there's aspects to a task where it's like I can locate and navigate or reckon and those kinds of things. And if I can accomplish that to this level on an outline task, then I know that when I go to another task that's listed on a competition as level 1, right, that I should be able to accomplish that, but no matter how it's set up, right? That's the idea. And this is where I think something like the simulators are actually going to be very helpful because you can use that to develop your algorithms and then put it in your vehicle, and you should be very structured and knowledgeable about where you're at. And then when you leave and pack it up in a box to go to a competition, right, you can pull it out of the box and know I'm as good as you. And that's the idea, because we've seen a lot of disparity, especially because some people have economics. That's one of the reasons I put that picture up front. They accomplished a hell of a lot with no money. So I see people come up and they've got sensors out the wazoo, and they don't accomplish anything. So this is where Tom and I were talking about this lack of preparation and some things that we want to try and help people with. So but the reason they were successful was the people who mentored them stuck with them the whole way through. So the only sensor on that boat that's got any kind of value to it at all is the multi-beam sonar, and that was the cheapest one you could buy. It was only $24,000. That's the entire value of the boat. I mean, everything else was bought down at the hardware store pretty much. It's sewer pipe. So, yeah.
They're going to yell at me for not talking to the mic. Yes, we will. I learned that yesterday. So my question is, when you talk to all these other teams, it seems like there's a lot of things going on and we're trying to avoid reinventing a lot of wheels. Did you see any commonality between the programs all over the world and what made successful teams? Were there any things that you guys were able to identify that could be shared that were like, all right, this, like Kelly said, the correlation, maybe not causation, but these were what, maybe some best practices? Yeah,
there's definitely things. But the two things that we saw that were really key is one, that a mentor stuck with the team. So somebody involved in the university or even outside, but somebody stuck with them through the years. And the second thing was that the team took ownership of bringing up the next generation. That was a huge one. So a lot of people go into these things and learn what they want to learn, and then they get out and move off to a job and so forth. but they don't leave behind anything to help the team move on. So if you look at the Bumblebee team in Singapore, they actually now have a training team to get onto their main team. So you have to go through a training camp and a smaller one. You go to the same competition, but you're not expected to win or anything. You're just expected to learn the lessons and watch the older guys, and then they document everything very well. So one of the bad things that I see also, and this is where I hope OES can help people with their careers, is a lot of the solutions being put out are impractical. So for example, I'll use Bumblebee since they're a success. They've got probably, it's like a disco dance going on inside their housing. They have a clear housing, and they've got streams of LED lights blinking all over the place. Well, in an AUV world, right, you would never do that. We go to the extent of having sensors turn off all the LEDs that we use as indicators in the lab. So when that can goes dark, we rob every milliamp we can back. So that's a practical design. So now there's just a lot of fun, right? It looks great in the pool. The kids love it, so you can't pick on them for that. But you got to, that's one of the other things like we want to pass on. I'll give you another great example in Singapore. And that's where I started this, by the way, so that's what I know the best. But they also give time at the sessions where people like myself will walk around and meet with each team, talk to them about their design, and they'll defend their design to me about why they did what they did. Then I'll tell them about what I think might be working better. You don't want to hurt anybody's feelings or anything, but you want to give them some mentorship about what they would need in the real world, like turning off the lights. So, so there's things like that, and you see those kinds of things, and when they come back, and they're usually very, very grateful, by the way. It's a great interaction with the students, and it also shows them that adults are not something to be feared. So, there's a lot of people culturally will be very careful about approaching you because of who you are. And I think, I'll say it this way even, Americans tend to be a little bit more outgoing, and so Asian culture tends to be a little bit more respectful and won't, they don't want to hurt your feelings or be rude or anything, and we don't really care. So it's like, ask me whatever you want to ask me. I don't care. So there's those kinds of barriers we're trying to break down. That's really what this is about, is to try and give an even footing for everybody and help that mentorship thing be uniform and support the mentors themselves. Give them a resource pool so they don't have to work so hard and be there for everything. That's the idea. So we'd like to include your simulator type stuff in part of that package where they can come and download it and, So, anybody else? Yes, sir. Oh, it's Bumblebee.
Yeah, so...
Don't shoot me, man. I like the lights.
no, nothing with lights. So I just want to ask, right, would there be efforts put forward to make some of these... you were talking about standardization of tasks, right? So to really make it more relevant to what we are doing in the industry. Because one of the issues with engagement with industry that teams face is really... the industry doesn't really see the value of all this competition so strongly. I mean, yes, training people is important, but a lot of them look at commercial value. They look at whether you have an actual proof of concept or certain piece of technology that is not reinventing the wheel. And if it's always like that, it's actually very difficult for these teams to actually engage the industry and to bring on sponsorships and all that. Yeah. So yeah.
The reason we've talked to industry too, and I've got, by the way, a sidebar to this for the AUV meetings. I'm bringing on the Society of Underwater Technology, which is sort of the industrial wing. We're more the academic side at OES. So they're going to be joining us to do those meetings. And with them, they're bringing vendors who are interested in solutions. So what they want to see, and they're going to try and push for, is giving us clues for the papers and so forth about things that they would be interested in accomplishing. The problem with the competitions is a lot of the solutions being presented are impractical. They're going to be way too costly to manufacture, and they're not reliable, and things like that. What we want to do is not necessarily kill the creativity of students, making these wild assumptions and so forth and doing things, but we do want to let them know when they, so when they interview, they don't go up and say, well, I did this, and that's great, as opposed to, well, I know that wasn't practical, But like I say, the first vehicle I showed, and we've done this with most of our vehicles, is we don't give them a lot of money or instrumentation. You have to solve the problem a different way. And the maps are USGS quality that comes out of that boat. The problem that we actually made that boat to solve, oh, I'm out of time, is if you look at the map, there's a 3D map of the ocean bottom and a 3D map of the ocean, terrestrial Earth. There was a white line between the two that was never filled in. So that boat was actually built to do shallow water mapping purposely. So I could buy a very cheap multi-beam, and because I only was going to be in a meter, 2 meters of water. So I get high resolution mapping because of the pixels are so tiny. So you just solve the problem on something where the data is missing, and it was very practical, and the USGS liked that. So it didn't need a lot of money, hit a real problem, and so that's the kind of thing we want to try and help too, is get the competitions in contact with, in fact, Esteban was just talking to me about a new competition, and he was asking me specifically, what's a real problem that I could use for the students to go against? So he's going to be contacting me, get some film and stuff. We'll try and do that. And then when you solve those problems, and a company can see that you did that, your credibility with them goes way up. And you can work at a truck company making autonomous driving vehicles if you're good at it. So he's not even paying attention. He's in his email. Yeah, I was talking about you, Vladi. Oh.
Had a comment related to what you were just saying, that I think the outcome from these competitions is not necessarily technology. It is the students themselves.
Yes.
So I think something I will bring up, I don't know if it's really a question, is that whether or not students are doing practical things may not really matter. It's more the experience that they get in doing those things that is what industry should be looking for coming out of these competitions.
I don't disagree with you, but I would say us telling the industry what they should be looking for is not the way to look at this. They're the ones looking for people who come out of school able to do something for them. And so they want to see some kind of jump between the fun of competition and whatever impracticalities were there, and how you can prove that you're going to be somebody who can do the work that they want to get done. So and it may not be right, and maybe we can talk to them somewhat about certain parts of it, but they, in today's world, they're not willing to wait 6 months for somebody to be productive. They want them to come in the door and roll. That's why they have internships, by the way. The whole purpose of internships is to weed you out. It's not about help a kid during the summer. It really isn't. It's companies saying, we'll take a gamble on you for 10 weeks, and if you can show me something, then I'll invite you back for a job interview. So we want to try and help those things. So, anything else? Yeah.
I wanted to add a comment, and if we're smart, we can sell the competition to industry and advocate that they become a mentor. And what they have bought themselves for the price of a mentor is interaction with a good group of students, motivated students, over a lengthy period of time, a year, a semester, or more, for a very nominal cost. And they've vetted those students that entire time. They've also made sure they've mentored them for the things that they're going to need for their company. And I don't know why we don't get smarter about selling that to companies.
That is the right aspect to take, I think.
Right.
To say, because I mean, you and I, a lot of the older folks here, we go to these competitions, and I talk to students, and some of them are dead impressive right off the bat. They're going someplace. And when Brian was a student at MIT, I remember meeting him the first time, and I walked out. Did I offer you a job at one point? Yeah. I mean, I just walked away from that, and I said, that guy's impressive. So I've done it a number of times with people. You're right. That's really the way to do it, is to get them in there and see what people are doing and talk to them, so they realize the competition and practicalities are not the person. So anyway, this thing's still flashing at me. I'm out of time, I think. Well, thank you guys for listening.
Thank you very much. So some of you bright sparks out there may have noticed that the agenda as published does not match the agenda as presented today. And so the brief that I am scheduled to give now, which was the origins of RobotX, was given earlier in the day. And I'm going to use just a few minutes to talk to you about how the rest of the event is going to go. We will go from here to lunch, but I would advocate that instead of going directly to lunch, you stop and maybe talk to one student or more about the posters that are out there. 4 of those authors were invited to present a paper at this workshop, at this, not workshop, at this forum. And 6 more, I believe, were invited to present posters. And they've put a lot of time into writing the paper from which the poster was derived. And I would advocate that y'all might learn something and really enjoy talking to the students, as Bill suggested that you might like to do. That is going to be this afternoon starting at 3:30 for the student paper presentation. And it will be in the Banjo-Patterson room, not in this room. The Banjo-Patterson room is the room that Brian Bingham spoke in yesterday, giving the Ross tutorial. In this room, directly after lunch, will be a live stream of the student feedback session. So we want as many students as possible in this session, but we also want people that are mentors and judges who are interested in learning the student feedback. We are doing that in this room so that it allows the live streaming and we can get maybe some input and some questions from those students who couldn't attend. We will then take a break from 3 to 3:30. I encourage you to look at the posters again. And if you are staying with the student section, you will move over to the Banjo-Patterson room. In the Banjo-Patterson room at 1:30, we will be running a session on the autonomous vehicle competition design. Zaz will be facilitating that, and there will be, or do I have that backwards, Amir? You're looking at me funny. That's right, okay. And we will be talking about the philosophy behind course design. What are your objectives in developing your courses? And these are all, the panelists are all people who run other competitions and have a lengthy experience at the evolution of the competition courses. After that session in the Banjo-Patterson room, then Amir's group will move over to this room because we want to live stream out what we are thinking about for the 2018 RobotX competition. And we want as broad an audience to see that as possible so that we get the live feedback. At 7 o'clock this evening, our hosts, RoboNation, have arranged for us to take a harbor cruise. And if it's anything as spectacular as the views we had last night at the Sydney Tower, we're in for a real treat. There is a map in your package that gives you walking directions from here, down Pitt Street, across the street to Circular Quay, and to where we will be meeting the boat. I would suggest that you get there a little early, maybe 6:45, just so you have a little get lost time and so that the boat doesn't take off without you. It isn't one of those things you can just show up at 7:30, so sad we'll be gone. So please join us there. Also, since we will not have a plenary session tomorrow morning, I wanted to let you know what our sessions tomorrow morning will be because we will start right off in sessions. I will be convening a panel of people who have run competitions and have some experience with all of the foibles of judging competitions. And we will be talking about how to do that fairly and what are some of the constraints that we have to deal with and how we might overcome them. We would really appreciate if some students attended that session because we would like student feedback as well. That will be in the Banjo-Patterson room. In this room, being live streamed, will be the role of simulation in design and testing, and Brian Bingham and Tom Curtin will be running that. They will have a panel, and then they will have, they're looking at the role of simulation for a virtual competition as well, and that will be split between 2 sessions, but both of those sessions will happen in this room. After that, we will have lunch. I again invite you to look at some of the poster presentations, which will be available again tomorrow during all of the breaks and during the lunch break. We will reconvene in this room for a plenary session where we have an invited industry presentation. We will be making some announcements that I think you'll be interested in. At the end of that, we'll have some closing remarks. And then at 7:30, we have individual dinners set up for groups of 6 to 8. Many of you indicated that you would be available, that you would still be with us on Friday evening. We are setting up now how we are going to run that, which staff member is going to be at which restaurant. They may want you to attend their session. We're hosting the dinner for you, but there's no free dinner. We expect you to engage and answer our questions. We want to collect more feedback from you at this event. So, there will be really nice restaurants. We have a list of them. If there's a food requirement that you have based on allergies or preferences or religious observations, we can accommodate that. We have enough places. And let me know about that or Sherry about that, and we will get you situated. Probably I'll be walking around tomorrow around lunchtime to get everybody signed up, and you'll know which restaurant you're supposed to go to. Most of them are within walking distance. I believe there's 1 or 2 that we might Uber to or combine taxis somewhat. Does anybody have any questions about how the schedule's going to go? Great. And if you get lost along the way, everything's on the 3rd deck, and Sherry and Diane can point you to where you want to go. All right. With that, go look at the poster sessions, and we'll start lunch at noon. Is that, or yeah, is lunch at 12:30 today? At noon? Okay. Lunch is at noon today, and then it's a buffet style again and in the Dorothy McKellar room. All right. Thank you.